Artificial intelligence. What is the correct way to understand it in 2026, going into 2027 and 2028? Well, the reality is that there's a big discussion about the level of losses, job displacement, adverse effects to jobs that people are talking about in relation to artificial intelligence, and rightly so. However, the reality is we're probably not going to see the level of adverse effects, job displacement, and job losses because jobs and economic activity are increased by artificial intelligence, and people don't really understand artificial intelligence, which I'm going to try and help out now by explaining to you, the intelligentsia, as well as the masses as well, what artificial intelligence is. Because whatever the silicon chips, those amazing things that the Taiwanese using German and Austrian refined silicon do, the reality is that it's humans who use artificial intelligence. So as good as the technology is, we need to think about how humans are using it. And humans are being very logical and using artificial intelligence mainly for sating their curiosity on topics that they know little about, that they want to know a lot more about. They are avoiding embarrassment with other humans because you can ask ChatGPT questions for a couple of hours without annoying it, whereas you will annoy a human after a while, or they may find your line of questioning odd. So we're dealing with our curiosity, we're dealing with our natural feeling of embarrassment as well, and that is bringing us to a better place in terms of understanding to a certain degree. However, the problems is that garbage in, garbage out, you can have incorrect information, mistakes, hallucination, or the AI can lead you down a dark path. So it's not all perfect. Let's be very clear about that. Nothing's perfect. Better as well. And so net, that is a benefit. But then another question comes up is, are we in an AI boom or bubble? Now, there's no doubt that we're in an AI boom because the amount of money that's being spent on these systems, about $1 trillion in 2026 is slated. More may be spent. We don't know, but that's certainly a number that's been out in the marketplace if you listen to financial media. And that suggests that we could be headed towards a post-boom bust or a bubble bursting, depending on what nomenclature you want to use. Now, one of the points that Jeremy Grantham has pointed out, and he used to be interviewed by Eric Schatzker on Bloomberg Television. Eric Schatzker, a very good interviewer, and Jeremy Grantham, the multi-billionaire who's given most of his money away to the Grantham Environmental Protection Trust. He was interviewed with Stephen Bartlett on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, Diary of a CEO, which I can strongly recommend. Stephen Bartlett is a magnificent mixture of hyper-politeness and hyper-directness. He's brilliant. Perfect example of what England can create in terms of getting to the nub of issues, but doing it very politely and in a very friendly manner. But what Jeremy Grantham said was that AI, in terms of the boom that we're in now, is like the railroads of the late 19th century in America, where you had multiple railway barons sort of duking it out with railways next to each other. And that is not a correct analogy, in my opinion. The correct one is that the AI boom of right now, the second quarter of the 21st century, is more like the building of the electric grid or the waterworks, water systems, piping, that sort of thing, because it's that level of utility. Because whereas a child may say, oh, I want to know everything in the world, well, you can't, right? The human brain does not allow for that. So you need a tool that allows you to scan a large portion of information, admittedly not perfectly. So for my Substack friends out there, I do understand, trust me, that AI is far from perfect. It hallucinates, it makes mistakes. There's a lot of question marks over it. But it allows you to access vast amounts of information and allows you to focus better despite the drawbacks. So it's not really like two railways next to each other. It's more like a system that allows you to deal with all of your data. And this is another very important key point. If you think about it carefully, you realize that for the last 100 years, we've produced vast amounts of text data, photographs, video, sound files, code. The list goes on. It would be billions of square kilometers or trillions of square kilometers of paper, the amount of data that we've created if it was all on one side of some paper. But all of that data is not accessible. Very little of it is accessible because humans don't live forever and we have small brains compared to the quantity of data. Therefore, we need a machine to crunch data. And as I say, we're not just talking about text, books, papers, texts of all kinds. We're talking about pictures, video, code. The amount of data that's out there is gigantic. You must have AI to chew through it imperfectly as it does. So that's why, the market will go up and market will go down. But the reality is that AI is here as our machine for processing data. We're not going to disinvent the tractor or the front-end loader. The reality is earth-moving equipment is necessary, and that's basically what AI is. It has that level of utility. So whilst there will be stock market busts and all sorts of things like that, AI is not some overinvested fad. AI is a very, very necessary movement in technology. Now, Jeremy Grantham correctly points out that Amazon went down 92% after the dot-com bust. But then, as he correctly pointed out, it has now lasted and it owns a lot of retail. So it's gone up and up and up. So the fact that SoftBank and Amazon and a variety of other tech companies went down in a big way in 2000, 2001, doesn't change the fact that they've actually kept going and they were actually very necessary. AI is arguably far more necessary than what Amazon has done, although Amazon's involved in it. So it's very likely that AI has a very strong future that is materially different to the analogies of the past that historians like me and investors like Jeremy Grantham like to point out, that they're not good analogies because they suggest that humanity hasn't advanced in the last 120 plus years, and it has, and AI is more useful as a result, and it's being powered by companies that have very strong free cash flows for which they're not properly valued, and because of the stock market in America, dividends are not the name of the game, and therefore it makes more sense for these companies to plow hundreds of billions into AI rollout, even though people will say, well, we've seen this trailer before. Well, I understand that, but the reality is this trailer is different, notwithstanding the fact that people always say it's different. Well, it's always different because it is different, and the reality is that more people want AI, more people want to utilize it from individuals, companies, businesses, governments, universities, and the like. Now, the other interesting point that Jeremy Grantham talks to Stephen Bartlett about in the podcast is the climate and the environment. But he basically talks about toxins in the environment, like herbicides and a range of other things, what we eat and its effect on fertility. I need to explain that the climate change discussion over the last 25 years has not helped in terms of unmuddying the waters, because pollution is what kills. Climate change is a different concept from pollution in that you can have pollution without climate change and pollution is still bad, and we need to clean our fuels and clean up our use of chemicals, whether we got climate change or not. And there has been significant debate over climate change. People don't really debate about pollution, which is good. There's broad agreement there, and that is where we need to focus. And technically, if you deal with pollution, well, then the concept is pollution is anthropogenic, right? It comes from people, from humans. If you deal with pollution, then you should deal with climate change at the same time. So the argument, and I've said this to many people, is that we need to focus on pollution because there's broad agreement there. Toxins, herbicides, non-clean fuels are a huge issue. And if you sort that out, then you can sort out climate change 2 for 1. It's beautiful. But if you just talk about climate change, it will create problems because you're not talking about pollution specifically, and you'll get a range of problems in relation to levels of agreement, so on and so forth. And we need to be sticking to where we can agree. And pollution, human-generated pollution, is where we can get. That being said, even though pollution is not so much mentioned, if at all, in that episode of Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett and Jeremy Grantham, I can strongly recommend listening to it and subscribing to Stephen Bartlett's channel. It's a very good one.